Morgan Freeman fought for a waitress. What happened next changed everything. The elegant restaurant bustled with conversation, the clinking of silverware and the scent of fine cuisine. Wealthy patrons dined under golden chandeliers, oblivious to the quiet figure moving between tables. She was just another waitress, until Morgan Freeman noticed something odd, and what he saw would change everything. Does wealth determine respect? Comment 1 for no, 0 for yes. Morgan Freeman had dined in some of the finest restaurants in the world. He had seen luxury, power, and excess, all displayed on silver platters. But tonight, as he sat in the dim glow of an upscale dining hall, his attention wasn't on the food, it was on her. She moved swiftly between tables, her posture perfect, her smile unwavering. A model employee. Yet there was something beneath the surface. Morgan had learned to read people. And this woman, she wasn't just working, she was surviving. Then he saw it. A subtle glance, a hesitation near the kitchen, and then a quick movement. She carefully wrapped up a plate of leftover food and slipped it into her bag. His brows furrowed. She wasn't stealing, not exactly. She was hiding. The moment passed in an instant, unnoticed by the wealthy patrons who barely acknowledged her existence. But Morgan had seen enough. Something in the air shifted. This wasn't just an overworked waitress sneaking a free meal, there was more to this. Morgan set down his glass, his expression unreadable. He didn't believe in coincidences, and he knew one thing for certain. He needed to know why. Morgan Freeman sat at his table, fingers resting lightly against his glass, his mind no longer on the elegant meal before him. The hum of the restaurant, a mix of soft jazz, clinking silverware, and hushed conversations, faded into the background. His focus was elsewhere. Across the room, the waitress moved with quiet efficiency, her uniform crisp, her posture perfect. She was seamless, unnoticed, and that was precisely what bothered him. Morgan had spent a lifetime studying people, reading the stories written in their eyes, in their body language, in the moments they thought no one was watching. Tonight, he was watching, and he noticed what others didn't. The way her shoulders stiffened just slightly after long hours on her feet. The way her fingers curled against the fabric of her apron, as if grounding herself. The way she stole a hesitant glance toward the kitchen, her lips parting ever so slightly before she quickly looked away. She was working hard, harder than anyone in the room. Yet something was off. Then it happened. A moment so brief that most would have missed it. As she passed the kitchen entrance, she subtly reached for a plate of untouched food, carefully wrapping it in a napkin before slipping it into her bag. Morgan's brow furrowed, not an act of carelessness, not greed, survival. The moment passed in an instant and she continued her duties as if nothing had happened. But Morgan had seen enough. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Who was she feeding? A struggling sibling? A parent? Herself? The questions gnawed at him, the weight of the unknown pressing against his chest. And as the night went on, Morgan made a decision. He wasn't just going to wonder, he was going to find out. Hours later, as the restaurant emptied and the last patrons left with satisfied smiles, she remained. Morgan watched as she methodically cleaned her station, untied her apron, and carefully folded it over the back of a chair. Then, slinging her bag over her shoulders, she slipped out the back entrance into the cool night air. Morgan followed. He kept his distance, his steps silent against the pavement. He wasn't stalking, he was seeking understanding. The city lights stretched long shadows across the sidewalk as she walked, her pace brisk, her head slightly lowered. Morgan expected her to head toward a parked car, but she didn't. Instead, she made her way to the nearest bus stop. Morgan's chest tightened. She worked double shifts at an upscale restaurant, yet she couldn't afford a car. Something was very, very wrong. He climbed onto the same bus, taking a seat near the back, ensuring enough distance so she wouldn't notice him. The ride stretched past the high-rise apartments, past the bustling city streets, past the places where people lived comfortably, unaware of the struggles just beyond their world. With each passing mile, the scenery changed. Glass buildings became worn-down storefronts. Polished sidewalks turned to cracked pavement. Streetlights became few and far between. And still she remained silent, staring blankly out the window. At last she pulled the cord. The bus groaned to a stop in front of a rundown apartment building, the kind that had seen better days, where time and hardship left their mark on every brick. Morgan followed at a distance, his heart heavier than before. She climbed the stairs, reaching into her bag for a key, then hesitated. Morgan watched, his breath caught in his chest. Through the thin curtains of the window, he saw it. The truth. The apartment was bare. No furniture, no table, no couch, just a single mattress on the floor. And then, a sound. A child's sleepy murmur. Two small heads peeked out from behind the mattress. Morgan's chest tightened as she knelt beside them, opening the takeout container with careful hands. She wasn't stealing food for herself. She was feeding her children. The kids, no older than 5 or 6, scooted forward, their eyes wide with anticipation. They ate with quiet urgency. She didn't take a bite. She just watched them, a soft smile on her lips. And then a voice broke through the silence. "Mommy, will we have dinner tomorrow?" Morgan froze. She hesitated just for a second. Then, brushing her daughter's hair back gently, she whispered, "Of course, baby, I'll figure it out." She smiled, but it wasn't the smile of someone who believed her own words. Morgan exhaled sharply, stepping back into the shadows. He had followed her out of curiosity. But now he couldn't just walk away. Morgan Freeman stood in the dimly lit street, his gaze fixed on the small, barely furnished apartment across from him. The weight of what he had just witnessed settled deep in his chest. The woman, a waitress in an upscale restaurant serving lavish meals to the wealthy, was barely surviving herself. Worse still, her children were hungry. Morgan exhaled slowly, pressing his hands into his coat pockets. He had spent a lifetime witnessing the vast differences between wealth and struggle, but nothing compared to seeing it this close. This wasn't just about financial hardship. This was about dignity. She had worked all night, smiled at customers, made sure every table was perfectly set, all while knowing that when she got home, there wouldn't even be a table waiting for her. And yet, she still smiled for her children. Morgan knew he couldn't just walk away. He had to act. The next evening, Morgan returned to the restaurant, this time with a plan. As soon as he stepped through the entrance, the maitre d' rushed over. "Mr. Freeman, a pleasure to have you with us again. Shall I prepare your usual table?" Morgan waved a hand dismissively. "No, thank you. I'd actually like to request a particular waitress." The maitre d' blinked in surprise, but quickly recovered. "Of course. May I ask who?" Morgan glanced toward the far end of the dining hall where she was already working, efficient, focused, unaware of his presence. "Her," he said simply. Moments later, she approached his table, her expression polite but cautious. "Good evening, sir," she said, placing a menu in front of him. "I'll be your server tonight." Morgan studied her for a moment. Now that he knew the truth, he could see the exhaustion hidden behind her eyes, the slight tremble in her fingers. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Anna," she said finally. Morgan nodded. "Anna, do you remember me?" For a brief second, her mask slipped. Recognition flashed in her eyes. She recovered quickly. I believe so," she said carefully. "You were here last night." Morgan leaned forward slightly. "And I followed you home." Anna's breath caught. For the first time, she lost control of her expression. Her body went rigid, her fingers tightening around her notepad. "Excuse me," she whispered. Morgan kept his voice calm. "I saw you take food. I saw where you live. I saw your kids." Her face paled. Her eyes darted around as if calculating how fast she could leave. "I don't know what you think you saw, but I'm not here to judge you," Morgan interrupted gently. Silence. Anna swallowed hard, her throat working against the panic rising inside her. "I don't need your pity," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Morgan shook his head. "This isn't about pity." He exhaled. "It's about something much bigger than that." Morgan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, setting it on the table. Anna took a step back, her arms folding tightly across her chest. "I don't take handouts," she said, her voice firmer this time. Morgan tilted his head. "Good, because this isn't one." She hesitated. "This," he said, tapping the envelope, "is an opportunity." A real one. Anna eyed it warily but didn't move. Morgan continued. "I don't just want to help you, I want to fix what's broken." Her brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Morgan leaned forward. "You work hard, harder than most. You give everything to this job and yet you go home to nothing. That's not just unfair, it's unacceptable." Anna blinked rapidly. "I want to invest in you," Morgan said. "I want to raise wages here, provide better hours, create emergency funds for employees who need them." Anna let out a shaky breath. "Why?" Morgan studied her carefully. "Because I refuse to sit in luxury while people like you, the ones making it possible, struggle to eat." Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them back. She wasn't used to kindness. She looked at the envelope again. It was right there, a way out. But old habits die hard. She clenched her fists. "What's the catch?" Morgan gave a small smile. "You helped me do it the right way." Anna stared at him. For the first time in years, someone was offering her something real. Not charity, not pity, respect. The air between them was thick with uncertainty. Finally, after what felt like forever, Anna reached out, hesitant, unsure, and picked up the envelope. Her hands shook slightly as she held it to her chest. Morgan watched her carefully. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." Anna inhaled sharply, her defenses slowly crumbling. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe in something better. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Okay." Morgan leaned back, satisfied. This wasn't just about helping one person, this was about changing lives. Anna left the restaurant that night clutching the envelope tightly against her chest, her mind a storm of conflicting emotions. She had spent years enduring, surviving, pushing forward on sheer willpower alone. And now, for the first time, someone had noticed. More than that, someone had cared. But part of her still hesitated. Could she really trust this? Morgan Freeman was a man of power, wealth, and influence, a man from a world far removed from her own. People like him didn't change the lives of people like her, did they? As she walked home, the city lights dimming behind her, Anna thought about the weight of the envelope in her hands. It wasn't just money. It was a doorway, a chance. But was she brave enough to step through it? The next morning, Anna sat at the small kitchen counter of her nearly empty apartment staring at the envelope. She hadn't opened it yet. Her children were still asleep, curled up under a single blanket on the mattress. She could still hear her daughter's voice from the night before. "Mommy, will we have dinner tomorrow?" Anna exhaled. With trembling fingers, she peeled open the flap and pulled out the contents. Her breath caught in her throat. Inside wasn't just cash, it was a letter. She unfolded the crisp white paper and read, "Anna, this isn't a gift. This is a beginning. I want you to help me change things, not just for yourself, but for every worker like you. We start today. Meet me at my office at 10 a.m. At the bottom, an address." Anna gripped the letter tightly. There was no pity in these words, no empty charity. It was a call to action. And for the first time in years, Anna felt something stir inside her, a sense of purpose. She had spent so long feeling invisible. Now, someone wanted to hear her voice. She wasn't about to waste that chance. At exactly 10 a.m., Anna stepped through the doors of a high-rise office building, the kind she had only ever seen from the outside. She took the elevator to the top floor, her heart pounding with uncertainty. When the door slid open, Morgan was already waiting. He smiled. "Right on time." Anna took a deep breath and walked forward. The office was spacious but not extravagant. Sunlight streamed through glass walls, casting long shadows across polished floors. Morgan gestured toward a seat. "I'm glad you came." Anna hesitated for only a moment before sitting down. "Why me?" she asked, her voice steady but questioning. Morgan leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Because you understand what needs to change better than anyone else. Anna swallowed hard. And what exactly do you want to change? Morgan exhaled. The system, the way workers are treated, the way people like you, the backbone of industries, are overlooked. Anna frowned. And you think you can fix that? Morgan gave a small smile. Not alone. That's why I need you. Anna's hands tightened into fists. I don't know anything about business, about making policies, or... That's not what I need from you. Morgan interrupted gently. She blinked. I need your story, your experience, your voice. Anna's breath hitched. For so long she had fought just to survive. She had never imagined that her story could actually matter. She had spent years working in silence, and now someone was telling her that silence could end. She sat back, staring at the man across from her. Morgan waited. Then, after a long pause, Anna nodded. I'm in. Morgan smiled. This is just the beginning, he said. The following weeks moved quickly. Anna wasn't just a waitress anymore, she was a voice. Morgan set up employee meetings, wage evaluations, and policy reviews. He used Anna's story as the foundation, ensuring that no worker would have to endure what she had. And then, word spread. News outlets caught wind of what was happening. Social media picked up the story. Morgan Freeman and a former waitress joined forces to change the industry. Anna's name was suddenly everywhere. She was interviewed. She was invited to speak at forums. She was no longer invisible. She still worked at the restaurant, but now she worked to make things better. And the changes weren't just local. Other businesses started paying attention. Other employees, people like Anna, began stepping forward, sharing their own struggles. What started as one conversation in a restaurant was turning into something much bigger. And through it all, Morgan stood by her side. You believed in me, Anna told him one evening after another long meeting. Morgan shook his head. You were always capable. You just needed someone to listen. Anna exhaled, looking out over the city skyline. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, heard, respected, and she knew this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every worker like her who had been ignored for too long. Anna had spent most of her life working hard and staying unnoticed. But now she was impossible to ignore. The restaurant's employees had started talking. Word spread beyond their walls. People were listening, and not everyone was happy about it. At first, the pushback was subtle. The restaurant's owner, a man named Richard Gable, had built his fortune on the belief that if workers needed more money, they should just work harder. So when he started hearing murmurs about higher wages, better hours, and benefits, he wasn't pleased. One evening, as Anna was finishing up her shift, she was called into his office. Richard sat behind his massive oak desk, fingers tapping against the surface. His smile was forced, his tone overly casual. I hear you've been busy lately, he said. Anna kept her expression neutral. I've been working, like always. His smile thinned. That's not what I meant. He leaned forward. You've been talking to the wrong people, Anna. Stirring up ideas that don't belong here. Anna felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her voice steady. Ideas like fair wages? Richard's jaw twitched. Ideas that make people forget how lucky they are to have a job at all. The room fell silent. Anna took a slow breath, steadying herself. She had spent years being afraid of losing her job, of not having enough to feed her children, of always being one misstep away from disaster. But not anymore. She met Richard's gaze head on. Lucky? She repeated. You think it's lucky to work all night and still go home hungry? Richard's expression darkened. Careful, Anna. A threat, a warning. But she didn't back down. Instead, she stood. I think we're done here. Richard's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing as she walked out the door. Anna knew what would come next, and she was ready for it. The next few days were filled with tension. Suddenly, Anna was being watched. Managers scrutinized her every move. Co-workers were pulled aside for private conversations. The schedule changed. Fewer hours, worse shifts. A clear message: stop or suffer the consequences. And yet something incredible happened. Her co-workers stood with her. Others started speaking up. More employees came forward with their own struggles. The mother working 3 jobs, the dishwasher sleeping in his car, the line cook skipping meals just to make ends meet. They weren't just fighting for Anna anymore, they were fighting for each other. And the movement was growing. Anna knew she had powerful opposition, but she also had something Richard didn't: Morgan Freeman. One evening after another grueling shift, she met him in his office. He was already waiting, a file open in front of him. "They're coming after you," he said simply. Anna exhaled. "I know." Morgan studied her, his expression unreadable. "And you're still willing to fight?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes." Morgan leaned back, a small smile playing at his lips. "Good." He slid the file toward her. "What's this?" she asked. "Leverage." She opened it and her breath caught. Inside was a detailed report on Richard Gable's business practices. Unpaid overtime, wage theft, labor violations. Morgan's voice was calm but firm. "You're not just fighting for a raise, Anna. You're exposing a broken system." She closed the file, her hands steady. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was taking back control. 2 days later, Anna received a call, a block number. She answered, a familiar voice. "Richard." "You don't know what you're doing," he said coldly. Anna held the phone tighter. "I think I do." Silence. Then, "If you keep this up, you won't have a job to come back to." A final warning. But he had already lost. Anna had spent years terrified of losing everything. But now, for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She had power. Not because of money, not because of status, because she finally knew her worth, and she refused to be silent. That night, Morgan held a press conference. Anna stood beside him. The cameras flashed, microphones were raised. Morgan spoke first. "No one who works full-time should have to struggle to survive." Anna took a breath, then she stepped forward, and she told her story. The room fell silent. Her voice shook, but she did not waver. "I am not just one person, there are thousands of us, and we will not be ignored," the crowd erupted. Morgan looked at her and nodded. She had just changed everything, but the fight wasn't over, and soon Anna would face a choice that would define everything she had worked for. The press conference sent shockwaves through the industry. Anna's story, once confined to the back rooms of a struggling restaurant, was now national news. The pressure mounted. Customers boycotted the restaurant. Other businesses faced scrutiny. The weight of the movement became impossible to ignore. And then Richard Gable finally caved. Days later, he sat across from Morgan Freeman and Anna in a stark, quiet office. The arrogance was gone. The confidence had crumbled. "I never meant for it to get this far," Richard muttered, rubbing his temples. Morgan raised a brow. "You never meant to get caught." Richard exhaled sharply. I thought I was running a business." He looked at Anna, his gaze almost apologetic. "I didn't see—" Anna cut him off. "You didn't look." Silence. Richard sat back, defeated. "What do you want?" Anna didn't hesitate. "Fair wages, benefits, protection for workers who speak up." Richard let out a bitter laugh. "You really think that's possible?" Morgan leaned in. "It's already happening." Richard looked between them, realization dawning. If he didn't change, he would be left behind. A long pause. Then finally he nodded. The contracts were signed. The policies reformed. For the first time in decades, the workers had a seat at the table. As Anna left the office that day, she glanced at Morgan. "You made this happen," she said. Morgan shook his head. "You did." She smiled, a real one this time, because she knew this wasn't just about her anymore. Through this story, we realize that true worth isn't measured by wealth, but by the impact we have on others. Success means nothing if it comes at the expense of dignity and fairness. People like Anna work tirelessly, often unseen, yet they are the foundation of industries, businesses, and communities. It takes one person to notice, one voice to speak up, and one movement to change everything. Because the most powerful thing you can give someone isn't money. It's respect.